Hi there guys, I hope you have had a good day. So Froch has given his assessment on Kell Brook versus Terence Crawford, and he did not mince his words, as he never does. He said that Kell Brook is not the same fighter he once was. In fact, he is broken since that Gennady Golovkin fight. He said that certain fights can take things away from a fighter, and that is what happened when Kell Brook got in there with Gennady Golovkin. Now, he's not the first one to say something like this about Kell Brook. That came after that fight, especially going into the Errol Spence fight and what happened in that one. What the general consensus was, is after that Gennady Golovkin fight where he had that problem with his orbital bone and he was told that he could have potentially gone blind in that eye, that worried Kell Brook, and many said that that will always be there in his mind. So it's not something where he's like broken, where his eye sockets are broken and that is a weakness that is there. The weakness that everyone is talking about, and I'm guessing Froch is talking about, is a mental one, because he knows that if he gets an injury to that region of his face, around his eyes, then that's a possibility, and that stays in his head constantly. And with regards to him not being the same fighter since Gennady Golovkin, I would say that he's similar. I mean, he's not the same, because I think that was probably one of the best Kell Brooks we have ever seen, aside from maybe the Sean Porter fight, but he was just in there with an elite level fighter when he got in there with Gennady Golovkin, and he was jumping up weights as well. So he was in there with a bigger man, a devastating power puncher who can box as well, extremely durable. So Kell Brook couldn't put a dent in Gennady Golovkin, but Golovkin was definitely able to Kell Brook, because he was doing it to natural middleweights or natural fighters who are bigger than Gennady Golovkin himself. This was a welterweight coming up, so it was all against Kell Brook on that night, and he did do well in the fight, but he was just in there with something else entirely, a different machine, and that was Gennady Golovkin. And many have said it before, he hasn't been the same since that fight. I mean, you have to feel bad for Kell Brook in some ways. Well, not bad, but you have to think about his career and what he could have achieved. He could have cleaned up at welterweight. He could have won all of the belts in that division. He was definitely good enough. I mean, if you look at the fighters that were around during that period, like Devon Alexander, I mean, Sean Porter was still there as well. Jesse Vargas and Danny Garcia, even a potential Amir Khan fight. Those were the fights that were being considered. Interestingly enough, what is kind of funny is Virgil Hunter, who was training Amir Khan in 2016, before Kell Brook fought Gennady Golovkin, and when Amir Khan was going to be fighting Canelo, he was saying that Kell Brook needed to earn the fight against Amir Khan, as opposed to the other way around. So Amir Khan, yes, had the big following, the big name. He was a household name, but Kell Brook was the IBF welterweight champion at that point, and Virgil Hunter was saying that Amir Khan was the one who decided whether he fought Kell Brook or not. Kell Brook needed to earn the fight against Amir Khan to get that kind of payday. So that is kind of interesting. There has always been this rivalry between the two of them, and we've never seen it settled in the ring, and I think we're all kind of fed up with that, so we want to move on. But there were some huge fights down at welterweight for Kell Brook, but he decided to move up and fight Gennady Golovkin. The reason why he done that is because the fight was there. It was available. A shot at greatness was standing right in front of him, because Chris Eubank Jr. was supposed to be the one fighting Gennady Golovkin, but negotiations broke down. We all know how hard that could have been, so negotiations broke down, and ultimately Kell Brook stepped in. But I mean, in hindsight, we can talk about whether it was a good choice or not. I don't believe it was, but he cannot change that now. But at that time, he had so many opportunities, because at that point, Kell Brook was a machine. He was incredible. I think that he would have easily beat Jesse Vargas, and I think that he would have beat Danny Garcia. Would have been a tough fight, an extremely tough fight, very difficult, very tricky, but I still believe he had the beating of a Danny Garcia at that point. Amir Khan as well. That would have been a big fight. So there were fights in his weight class that he could have taken or tried to get, but he moved up instead and tried to have a shot at the megastar Gennady Golovkin. And it is the belief of many, and Froch is just reaffirming that Kell Brook is not the same fighter now because he had something stripped away from him in that Golovkin fight. And that is something mental more so than anything else. And now going into this fight with Terence Crawford, you have to question what is left in Kell Brook. Not just physically, but mentally as well. Kell Brook is someone who hasn't really lived the life. He doesn't stay in shape out of camp, but he does get in incredible shape in camp. But that's not enough against someone like Terence Crawford, someone who's ranked within the top 4 pound for pound. Terence Crawford, a 3-weight world champion, but he doesn't have the best resume at welterweight. Doesn't have the best. And there is a considerable size advantage for Kell Brook. Now, Carl Froch also said that this will be Kell Brook's last fight. This is his cash out. He's going to take this fight, take the money, and sail off into the sunset. This will be his last fight. He's cashing out. Now, whether you agree with that or not is up to everyone's perception, but I don't believe that Kell Brook is doing this for the money. I believe that he's earned not a lot of money, nowhere near someone like Amir Khan, but he has earned enough money from the sport of boxing, so I don't think he needs this fight for that reason. I think that he wants the fight, I do. I think that Kell Brook, if he didn't want the fights, I don't think he would be motivated solely by money to get back in the ring. I don't believe that would be enough to take all of that weight off, the discipline, the time away from his family. I don't think it would be enough for Kell Brook to get back in there, in the ring against someone like Terence Crawford. I think that he is chasing maybe that WBO belt, maybe greatness, maybe redemption. One thing I do know though, if it is money, then he's not going to last long in this fight at all. It's going to be a very short night because Terence Crawford is another thing entirely to realistically anyone he has faced. Different from a Gennady Golovkin, different skill set, different abilities, not the same kind of power, not the bullish style, but similar in the fact that he can inflict an incredible amount of damage on Kell Brook if Kell Brook is not 100% invested in this. So Kell Brook in there for money doesn't go more than 5 or 6 rounds against Terence Crawford. Not necessarily like he's going to get stopped or knocked out and dropped, he's just going to get stopped from accumulation, and his corner might even stop the fight if that is the case. But if this is Kell Brook who's going in there for a shot at redemption, to win that world title, to become something great, to be a pound for pound star, then we have a different fight on our hands entirely. I think that we have all seen Kell Brook extremely motivated for a fight. We've also seen him not so motivated for a fight. I think that there's not much new with Kell Brook. He is the fighter he is. His motivations have sometimes been the thing that have been his downfalls. But in this fight, that's going to tell straight away. Rounds 1, 2, and 3. Those rounds are going to be extremely important for Kell Brook. Kell Brook can hurt Terence Crawford, that is for sure. He punches extremely hard, and I mean if he goes to the body, tries to slow Terence Crawford down, there is a chance. Not a big one, but there is a chance. I'm not writing Kell Brook off in this fight. I believe that he does have an opportunity to win, but it is going to be extremely difficult. Not an easy fight in the slightest. And Kell Brook knows that. If he does, maybe he will be motivated. That is the most important thing. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.